I started media about 20-something years ago, probably about 22 years ago, and mostly out of desperation because I hadn't studied media. I had failed to find work in what I had studied, and I was just somewhere there. Then I met a friend of mine who told me that I could join the media. I said, but I didn't study it. He said there are so many people there who didn't study anything to do with media. So he introduced me to somebody, and I started writing. Thankfully, my writing was liked, and so I moved from there. The newspaper for which I first wrote was called The Crusader, and it folded 2 years after I joined it, about a year and a half or two after I joined it. So that should have been around 1999, I think, is when it folded. So I left The Crusader and I moved to the New Vision, where I stayed from around fully employed from 2000. From 99 really up to 2009, 10 years. That's when I left actively being in the media. But I stayed as a columnist, a sports columnist for a while, but then left that too after some time. So there was a new TV. WBS had only started in 1998. And previously there was, of course, UTV, now UBC. So we thought about starting a sports show. We went to MTN. They said they would sponsor it, and so we started a sports show along with Mark Sally and the late Kenneth Matovu, who died in 2001. Actually, we started on 2nd January 2000. And it lasted for quite about 15 years before we left it. But then, of course, we had a brief moment still with Mark Sally and somebody else at NBS. There was also the radios and still doing sports. So in all those years, from about 99 all the way up to about 2015, I was involved in either kind of sports media, from TV to from media, from print to television to radio. So basically we pioneered the whole sports electronic thing: radio, the television, analytical, and in the electronic media. Yeah, there are factors that have affected the media generally, not just even in East Africa. There's been a whole turnaround of the way things are done. First of all, newspapers all over the world are struggling a lot because of the advent of social media. First of all, the electronic media took something away from the print media, because people didn't have to wait up to tomorrow's newspaper to find out what happened. They could watch that on TV and see the full. So that kind of took something away. But now when social media came, it took away from both of them, because now news is so instant and it's projected in a certain way. People have a choice of deciding which kind of news they want to get. So if they want news about something specific and not the other, they can vet it by themselves because of all the options that social media gives. So all over the world, newspapers are struggling. Now, in countries where they're traditionally strong, let's say like in the UK, which has mostly been the home of print media, you see that most of them went electronic through websites, expecting to get advertising, but now more advertising is going through social media. So what they do is they put up payment walls to read the content. They'll just give you a snippet of it, just something to draw your attention, and then they say you pay, and they put very little, £2 a week, $2 a week or something like that. But still, it's not earning them a lot of revenue, because so many of the people who were their readers, when the payment wall comes out, some of them have only managed to convert as little as 5% into actual paying people. So you see there's a general struggle across board. And some other newspapers like Guardian have even taken the extraordinary step of asking people to donate willingly, as little as $1 or something like that, to see that they continue doing their kind of journalism. So it's a struggle all over there. But the struggle is bigger than just the introduction of electronic and now introduction of social media. There's in East Africa and in Uganda, let's say I'll start from here, but even let's say Uganda, Rwanda, Tanzania, there's excessive strong arm from politics that kind of affects media, because there's not entirely freedom of media. And you see, when media is not free, it's hard enough to sell free media, as you've seen in developed countries. Now, selling not free media is even harder, because there people can write what they want, but still they struggle to sell it. Now here, there is the whole self-censorship of, if I write this, it's going to put me in trouble, and so many people stay away from it. So they keep in safe zones. So the media is not cutting edge. It is not the kind of thing that you would want to look forward to reading, because the person who is writing it, you can tell, is giving less than 20% of what they know. And I remember I used to see that when I was in the newsroom, and especially there were all these campaign season. So there are photographers who come, and so photographers come from different camps. So we all converge at the photo desk to see pictures, what's happening. And you see this camp had bigger crowds and this one and so on. But then the next day, the one which had smaller crowds is the one which has bigger crowds in the paper. And the one which has, and there's a lot of all that. Because of course newspapers have to censor themselves, because there are repercussions when they fall out of a certain line, and it's known. Uganda, Rwanda more so, okay? So Rwanda actually is almost iron fist. There is very little you can do outside of a certain, line of thinking. So Tanzania is getting there also, where it's a bit iron fist, it's not as free as it is. And then the thing with Tanzania, there is the whole, sometimes the language thing can be a bit complex, because media for most part is consumed by a certain caliber of people, who most there you would expect in countries like these ones are English speaking. But now you find a society where very many people speak other languages other than English. Let's say Kiswahili in the case of Tanzania, and Kinyarwanda in the case of Rwanda. And so that can create, so you see, you produce content for just a specific group of elite people who can understand that level of content. So, and even then, that content has got to fit within very narrow political considerations of, you can't cross this line, otherwise you're in trouble. So that kind of curtails the media. As I've said, it's hard enough selling these newspapers, even in countries where they are free to write whatever they want. It's doubly hard to sell it when all that is censored. I remember I was on a television station someplace, and we were talking about the situation between Rwanda and Uganda, the tensions. At the time it had just started. They hadn't boiled over quite like they have right now. And I discovered that a lot more is said in commercial breaks than is said on air, because everybody is scared of, what they will say. So the actual news is if somebody could tap into what is said during the commercial breaks, that's where all the story would be, because there's a lot of self-censorship. People know a lot of things, but they will not say the things they know. Now, when we're in the commercial break, we talk with these people and they are telling you very powerful things. And as soon as the cameras are rolling, then everybody is so dignified and so on, and giving nothing else but platitudes and, offering generic solutions. And I'm thinking, the cost of self-censorship in the media is very high, because then people cannot sit there and say, I'm going to get cutting edge material on a specific subject, because even people who know that cutting edge material are scared to say it, because they have lives to lead, they have families and so on, and they have businesses to run and things like that. So that's a very big problem. Now Kenya, because of course they have been in a more democratic society, more than we have, their media is thriving a bit more, although they are struggling with the same things that causing struggle for newspaper elsewhere in the world. But you see, that's why they are buying newspapers here in Tanzania and so on. They're expanding their media outreach business-wise, because there is a lot more operation, room for freedom of expression, so they can write just about anything and not step on toes. But you see, now to balance that out, because of course every politician wants to have a grip on media, to balance that out, politicians own newspapers or own shares in newspapers, and that's a guarantee that they will not say nasty things about you. But that doesn't mean the other newspaper, which is owned by your rival, will not say nasty things about you, while yours will be saying nasty things about your rivals will be saying nasty things about you. So generally, there's freedom of media. Try to own it, at least legally, or at least in an acceptable way, by buying into it, because media is business. Now, but in East Africa, the biggest issue has been advertising. Because newspapers are supposed to survive on adverts, so are radios and televisions. But how much of that advertising is there in the advent of social media and all these things, and reaching specific groups and so on? So you find that advertising revenues have gone down so much, and that has really affected media. And now you still find that the biggest advertisers still are government agencies or governments. And now that means that even independent media have to be careful about what they write about those in power, because they need the adverts. Even if they could write other things, and because they are not owned by government, still they are owned by government in a way, because if you're going to get adverts from all these, government parastatals and all that, if there is any such thing, then you're going to toll, And at the end of the day, newspapers, radios, television are businesses, and they can only be as good as how much profits they make. So when they make good profits, they hire good reporters, they have good content, they have good quality coming out there, and therefore they are more palatable and easier to sell to the public. If they cannot balance the budget, then the first thing they do, the content goes down. So they start having cheap reporters, and they cannot afford a certain caliber of reporters. So they cannot get the sort of content that makes them, a must read, so to speak. So then everything starts going down, like with every other business. So it's all down to the business acumen. And that has not been there so much, because there has not been a terribly strong newspaper reading culture in Uganda. It's never been there, really. But there was a time when newspapers sold a lot more than they sell right now, would you believe it? Because it was the only source of information. So if there was something that happened, the only way you were going to know about it was reading tomorrow's newspaper. But now, nobody wants to wait up to tomorrow. And by the time the newspaper comes out tomorrow, you've already had your feel of the information from all sorts of other sources. Because, that was the 1970s and 80s, yeah. Because there were no mobile phones, of course. That means that take away even the social media on mobile phones, just the actual mobile phones. So if there's something happening in town, you probably call somebody who has an office there, and they give you all the information. So you're not hungry the following morning for get me the newspaper. This is how I'm going to know. Then of course when the mobile phones became a bit more sophisticated, and pictures, sharing and all that, you're going to sit to where you are and watch a video of just about anything that's happening anywhere in the world. You do not have to wait for still pictures or even television pictures on tonight's news or tomorrow's newspaper. You see, even now, there was a time, for instance, radio stations here, when they had just come, would play a variety of music, because there are not too many of them. So today they are playing this, the other they are playing this, the other they are playing this, then gospel, then country, then what. But now, if you do that, you sink, because if someone likes country, he will get it in a station which is going to play country all day. If it's a gospel, there are so many which are going to play gospel all day. So you have to choose which one to go to, because now everything is niche. And so you can't say we're a variety station. I'm not going to be a country music lover who sits on your station to listen to 2 or 3 country songs a day. Yet I can have my feel of country on another radio station which plays just that, or gospel and so on. So these are the challenges that media has to adjust to. But the Ugandan media has not quite adjusted very well, because they are still trying to do reporting, what I call reportage. Whereas elsewhere in the world, when reporting became obsolete because people are getting information from elsewhere, people resorted to analysis. Now that's the one thing you're not going to get elsewhere. You want to read a good news analysis on a certain thing, you understand? Now that's how newspapers have gone across the world. That's what you get in the Times in UK, in the Guardian, in the Telegraph, and so on, because they realize that the news, people will get it elsewhere. But what is the analysis behind the news? Now, so you read, like, where people are saying that, you know, news is not supposed to be opinionated. No, it is actually now most opinionated, because people want to read. There's an expert on this subject. What does he have to say about, something? Let's say there's something that happened yesterday in the news in Uganda, and I want to read somebody who is a political analyst to tell me what does this mean, let's say for the upcoming elections. So I go there not wanting the news I know, but wanting what's the analysis behind the news, which is a bit of what we started in sport, because we know people watch the games, okay? But we knew that people would watch the games. We're not giving results. We knew people know that, but they want the analysis, okay? Why did Man U start with so-and-so and not so-and-so? Why is he playing like this? What do you think about this? Just small tidbits, okay? And why do I think Barcelona is going to win this game against Man U and so on, and just analysis before the game and after the game. Now that's where the relevance comes, because everybody watches the game, but still they want to hear the analysis, okay? Why were we beaten? Now that's where you need an expert, okay, even not just somebody to give you their opinion, and say maybe they shouldn't have started with this so and so and so and so, because if they had started with this other player, he would have been more effective, the way these people play and so on. And now the newspapers have not yet adjusted to that. They are still giving news, and their sales are going down and down, because I read actually a lot of the newspapers just to see the analysis, and I read columns and what they call op-ed, opinions. That's where my value in the newspaper is right now, because I'm not going to get news value from it, okay? Because even televisions, in spite of the fact that their news comes a bit quicker, you don't have to wait until the next day. You can watch it tonight. If let's say there's a riot in town, you'll watch it tonight, or even let's say lunchtime news. But even them, their opinion shows are big sales. Let's say like the front line, on NBS or what, where people are giving an analysis of topical issues and so on. So the whole news thing now has to shift to analysis, because that's where the interest is. Because the news, anything happens, you get it on your phone before even you step out of it, instantly. There will be pictures moving, there will be there will be, videos and so on. But what the videos cannot do is give you analysis. And now there's a niche of people who want to analyze issues, but are not getting that fix, so to speak, from our newspapers. Now, for me, it's really a fix. I want to read what people are saying about ABC. So it's almost like a fix. Now, when I buy a newspaper and I read a very good column of somebody analyzing something, I feel that the craving is, but there's not enough of that. Because previously, the New Vision, for instance, had Oromori in Western Uganda, it had Rupinyi, and had Emorimori for Iteso, so they had 3 different language newspapers. But that was done in public interest rather than for business purposes. You understand? That was mostly because as a government newspaper, rather than, apart from just making money, they had also to do some kind of community service, and news can be seen in that form. So I don't think that any of those other newspapers were making any profit whatsoever, Rupinyi and Emorimori. However, New Vision went with them because of those reasons, okay? As if serving the public, because news has also that element. But for that to happen, for that to even be there, the New Vision, which is the cash cow, has to continue being a cash cow. Otherwise, you're not going to be doing any charity news service to languages for purposes of, unless you are making money somewhere else. So the question is, how much money was Oromori making, or a top for, northern Uganda, or a Emorimori for Iteso. I don't think they are making that much money. So now if New Vision is going to sustain that community service, they have to continue. The leading cash cow, which is the New Vision newspaper, has to continue making money. Now for that to happen, there has to be an element of still going into analysis, news analysis. And that's the only way it can, because for purposes of news, it's very difficult for somebody to have to wait until the next day in this modern, fast food generation where everything is instant. So, and news, as much as anything else, coffee is instant, news is what, and all that. So, so to answer your question, the language options are going to be good actually for political mobilization more than for business. Okay? And I think that's the major concern, because if you want to send out a message across in different languages, like let's say for mobilization, political mobilization and so on, you need those media, because New Vision alone cannot get there, or even the English. Even Bouquet Day is going to, the radio, the TV is central. So you want to spread your message across. So it's powerful for that reason. But for it to continue running, everything is down to profit. Is it being profitable? For now, of course, generally the whole establishment that this Vision Group is extremely profitable. But they have to look in the future how they can continue being profitable, and how the leading, the major, brand, that is the New Vision newspaper, has to continue being extremely profitable. The truth is, here in Africa, it will last for a while, but it will not take maybe 10, 15 years before the whole thing has to be rethought all over again. First of all, here in East Africa, the media will last a bit longer. There's a direct proportion between democracy and media. Okay? So when democracy is high, media interest is high, because then people know that what they are reading is what the journalist knows to the best of their knowledge. But when the democracy is low, then media interest is low. So when there is bigger and better democracy and actual freedom of speech in our countries, then the media will thrive more than they are doing right now, because there is that direct proportion, But still, that is not going to last for too long. I'm talking about maybe, if with good democracy, this can last 10 years. If we had good democracy right now, the model we are doing now can last 10 years before it starts having serious cracks, and you start hearing they are cutting, they are laying off hundreds of workers and what. Yeah. Like the example I gave you, radios. Okay? I know where, if I am interested in gospel music, I know where to find it. Okay? Now remember when Capital had just started in the mid-1990s, gospel people wait Sunday, 2 hours on Sunday, to listen to some good gospel music. Now nobody has to wait up to Sunday. There are stations which are playing gospel from morning up to evening every day. So that means that niche has been cut off. Then this niche has been cut. So you have to stay with something. Now the question is, do we still have national newspapers? Are we going to continue having real national newspapers which cover the whole nation and what? Maybe not. As everything goes niche, even some of these newspapers have to adjust themselves and say, what niche are we serving? And how can we remain relevant to those ones we've chosen to serve? And if you find that, then you... Now, actually, the newspapers which seem to be doing well in America are regional newspapers of, okay, some of them have struggled also, but area newspapers, you see, which are not covering national news. And you see, there is those kind of people who are saying, let's say, for us, we are covering news in Minneapolis, okay? Or the greater Minnesota. Now, we don't care about what's happening in New York and what. Even if it happens at the White House, we only report it if it concerns our people. So they are writing for, let's say, a farming community, okay? And the only things they write which come from the top is the things which affect those farmers, because they affect those farmers, you understand? So those ones remain relevant because there are people who wake up in the morning, they read about the weather there, they read about, the crime there, there's some man who killed somebody has been caught, So, you know, your neighborhood is safer, what, you know, basic news, small news, but it's relevant to them. So maybe there was some rapist who was going around, so women were scared. So they are reading the newspaper to find out, can women now come out safely? So finally the police gives a, you know, press conference and says, no, the man has been caught, he's now in custody, so now it's safe for you to come out. And that is news just for a city, for a locality, not for the country. Ugandans right now want a media which is, first of all, free of any political encumbrances or any fears or self-censorship. That's the kind of media we need. Because we are still a developing country, we still need people to report and bring, like, you know, people in power to book. So all the original tenets of media still apply here in a bit until we get to a completely liberal society. I mean, democratic society is what I mean, where, you know, you don't have to always be breathing down the necks of politicians. But right now we are there, and we need that. We need somebody to bring those people to account and so on, to raise issues of corruption, to raise issues of abuse of office and things like that. So we need but for that to happen, the politics has to be free enough for the media to feel that they have the liberty to write about any politician in a way that brings them to account by virtue of them being holders of a public office. That's the sort of media that we need, which of course we do not have right now, where there is no repercussion, where there is no fear, and where there is no, you know, where the laws, the current media laws, which I'm sure you know, which are very, you know, draconian, have been taken out of the way. Media laws which were set, by the way, most of them during Amin's regime, and which have not changed at all, but which sometimes are just selectively, you know, applied. But that doesn't mean they cannot be applied when you cross a certain line. As long as the law is there, even if it is ignored, if it is not repealed, it can be used anytime by anybody. So we need a media which has a certain level of freedom, which we have not yet had. And now when that happens, because it will be our first time to have a free media, it will be novel. So it will be exciting. You understand? Because whereas other places, they've had enough of that, they are bored of it. For us, it will be a novel idea, and we will still be excited about it, and we will consume it when the politics is out of the way. In Kenya, they've kind of had it, because there's not been, after Moi, there's been a bit of liberty, you know, of speech. In Rwanda, they have absolutely never had it. Never, not even close, okay? Not even close. So now if they had it there, it will be very novel, where you can write about a president and in a critical way, and you know, and you're free to do it. Wow, their media sales would go high, shoot off out of the roof, because they've not had that. So, and neither have we here, by the way. Only we are not as bad as them. There's a lot more liberty here than there is there. Now in Kenya, I spoke to, you know, a preacher one time, and he told me it's pointless putting a Christian program on a Christian TV. They will not watch it. He said the people you want to watch, you find them on their secular channels and you pay for them to be there. That's how they will see you. Because if you go to a Christian channel, so you're preaching to the converted, so to speak. So you'd rather go where they are, you know. So that's why I think, and that's the thinking for so many of the ministries. We don't want to create our own thing to speak to preach to the choir. We want to reach out there. So you go to a secular station, buy time there, and invade their viewers with your message. And they have seen it like that for the most part, not the way we've seen it in Uganda. Yeah, of course it does. Of course it does. By the time you start policing what people say on social media, that's a very, very low form of authoritarianism, the kind that you can only find in these countries of ours. Because it's one thing if you're policing official media, but now social media is a totally different thing. And there's a lot of interest in the powers that be in Uganda in what is said on social media, especially by people who have influence and so on, because they know that they influence a great number of people. But there's a better way of doing it. For instance, they can start their own Twitter handles and give information that is counters. Okay, that is the better way of doing it. You understand? Yes, so what you give an alternative thing. So you don't arrest somebody because he has spoken something that is lies on social media. Tell the truth. Okay, and if your truth stands out more than his lie, then he's drowned out. But you see, it's when people are so scared and they have been in power for too long and they are choking in the privilege of it, that they start policing social media. It's not supposed to be that way. It's not supposed to be. What is going to happen on social media? And actually, that's what somebody asked me. You say you are inciting people. I say, who has ever incited people on social media? The thing is, how much of that incitement can amount to something real? If I told the people on social media now, come, let's gather in some place and do a demonstration, would they come? No, they wouldn't. This is just social media. Somebody is sitting at home enjoying it. So, but you see, when people are running scared, every media is a threat. They have control, of course, over the official media through, as I told you, fear, and especially they just instill enough fear for the journalists to censor themselves and be careful about what you write. And now, actually, usually, that works more than telling them not to write. So you just push, then the journalists actually, trim themselves and pull back even further than you would have wanted them. So, so it's working for them. Now the question is, how do they handle social media? First of all, the official media, they can close it down. They even have a law that if whatever, they can close it down. They can take your machines and pour in salt like they did with red pepper. There are so many things, but they have no control over social media. That is run from a different country. So what do you do about that? Now, the one thing dictators hate is a scenario where they have no control, because they thrive on control. Even when there is a certain level of benevolence or an apparent freedom, it is exercised in as far as they know they still have a way of reigning in on you in case you seem to be going too wayward. So they have to have a control over you. You understand? It's like letting a child run out of the house, but there is a fence around. So regardless of whatever he does, he's within this fence. He cannot go. But that's different if there is no fence and you think he can run into the road. So that's how but now social media is kind of disarms them because there's no control there. So the only way they can control is controlling the people who have an influence. Okay? And there was a talk of UCC having to, whatever. Now that is really sad. That is really sad. UCC now has to what? Very soon they will say, if you have this number of followers, then you have to pay tax.